I'm back. Oy, oy, oy. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a while. I took a little time off. I haven't touched this thing since I did the exhaust, to be honest. I've just been working on so many other projects and trying to take care of other things. Well, one of which was the Maverick. I've been really concentrating on this thing, trying to get it running, and I did finally get it running. Well, I hope everyone's having a great New Year so far, even though the month of January is almost over already. I just can't believe how fast time goes by anymore. So I think the goal today is I'm gonna get these fuel tanks mounted up on this truck. Now, these tanks are 33 gallons a piece, and these are off of an Isuzu NPR, in case you guys don't know. These are side impact rated. These were originally diesel tanks, but I got these things completely cleaned out and flushed out, and they're ready to go. Now I'm gonna make the passenger side tank my primary tank because this thing is still equipped with the throttle body, and the original throttle body fuel lines all run right here, and I'll be able to tap right into the tank on this side really easily. Now I honestly haven't decided yet if I was gonna plumb this tank in as well over here on the driver's side. I'm trying to determine whether or not I need that much capacity. That gives me over 60 gallons of fuel, which is nice to have. But for just basically running around town and stuff like that, the stuff I'm gonna do with this truck, it's quite a bit of fuel. Now, obviously I don't have to use it. Now, I did consider splitting this thing in half even, and making half of it a toolbox, and then making the other half just a little bit of extra fuel, maybe an extra 10 or 20 gallons or something like that. I don't know, I'll figure that out later, but for now I just wanna get them mounted on the frame. Shout out to Dave at North Valley Fleet here in Phoenix. If you're looking for any kind of Isuzu parts, he specializes in Isuzu trucks and fixes a ton of them. And this is who I got the tanks from. Now, he sold me these tanks for dirt cheap because they just don't use them anymore. Now everything is rear mounted in between the frame rail. I think these things are gonna work out really well. They were a perfect fit for this truck, I think. Now, when I bought these tanks, only one of the tanks had a set of these brackets on there. And these are actually the mounts that bolt to the frame, and they bolt to the straps right here. After doing the exhaust and everything, I figured out that I wanted to bump the tanks out, so I needed these brackets. So I went back down to North Valley Fleet and talked to Dave again, and he had an extra set of brackets laying around down there, and he ended up just giving them to me. I'm like, what do you want for them? He's like, nothing, just take them. He's like, we don't use them anymore anyway. All right, so the plan as of right now is I've got to modify the passenger tank for the sending unit. And what I'm gonna do for that is, you guessed it, more motorhome parts. I've got the original sending unit and everything out of the original motorhome tank. And my plan is to set this tank up to receive one of these sending units. So then if ever I need to replace it or whatever, it's to be super simple, off the shelf type parts. So I kept all the original fuel lines and the sending unit. I do have to work on this sock and everything is junk, and I think that I'm basically gonna replace this anyway. I'm just gonna use it for mock-up for now. And then also what I did was on the original motorhome tank, I actually cut out that part of the tank that the sending unit fits into. I thought about doing like a, you know, an inline pump or something like that. Like a frame mounted pump, that would probably be easier. I really like having the fuel pump in the tank. It keeps it cooler. Plus it'll utilize the sending unit, or the sending unit for the gauge and all that stuff. All that stuff will be built into it. All right, but first I'm gonna go ahead and warm up my hands a little bit. It is cold. It's cold this morning for here. I think it's in the low 40s right now, which for us here in Arizona, that's pretty darn cold. So when I cleaned these tanks, what I did was there was a little bit of residue from diesel fuel inside these tanks. Very, very little. These things sat up on a rack for who knows how many years with the caps off and everything. So I was a little worried about the insides of them, but they cleaned up beautifully. So what I did was I ended up getting some of that purple power, I think it was, from O'Reilly's. And I put a gallon of that in each tank with a gallon of water. I put the tanks in the back of my truck, and I just left them in the back of my truck for a couple days, and then did a little bit of spirited driving here and there, slamming on the brakes and the gas just to slosh it around. And that worked really good. So I'm not worried about welding on this thing whatsoever, or cutting on it or anything like that. Let me know what you guys think. Should we spend the time and go through and paint these things and strip them and paint them and make them nice, or just leave them alone and leave them a little crusty? I don't know. You let me know. My biggest problem is I can't remember which way I had them exactly. If they were like this or if they were like this. Let me see if I put these brackets on right. And I don't remember where I had these tanks set. I'm basically starting over again. Yeah, it's about even with the exhaust. I think that's where I had it. That looks good there too. Now when I did this exhaust, I had to bump this tank out a little bit because the pipe runs right there. Now a couple guys may have been a little bit worried about that pipe being real close to the tank, and it's really not that close. It probably looks like it on video, but it's not. I have no concern with it whatsoever being that close. I mean, it's no different than tailpipes running out the back of a car on either side of a fuel tank on, you know, a Chevelle or a Mustang or something like that. So I'm not worried about that at all. Probably what I will do though is I'll put some kind of heat shield right here. So that heat shield I'll put in, I'll just mount it to this bracket right here and right here down on the bottom where it curves. And that'll give me a little bit of deflection off of that. Now I made a mark on the frame all the way across, so these are even. Stay. Okay. Yeah, and then as far as that gap goes, whatever, that's fine. It looks good. The exhaust is basically centered right in there in that opening, so that looks good. Boy, some of you guys gave me a hard time about the stacks being mounted on the cab, and all I did was just create a giant echo chamber. I guess we'll find out, you know. One thing about this truck, guys, is this thing is just nothing but an experiment for me. If this doesn't work out, I'll change it. I don't care, you know, I'll just move it around. It's not that big a deal to me. Now the original one of the original cross members was actually in right here, and one of you guys mentioned too, as far as like the weight, all that weight hanging out on the frame and it flexing that frame rail, and you'd be 100% correct in that. So what I'm gonna do, well, with the transmission cross member there, that does help support that frame. Now back here, for this rear bracket, I have the original cross member that I cut off of the frame that was right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that, I think, right in here, and I'll drill new holes. So I'll line that cross member up with these tank brackets right there. That way that'll really support that and keep the frame rails hopefully from flexing too much, you know, with all that weight hanging out. My favorite tool as of right now anyway. Yeah, if you haven't invested in one of these mag drills, I highly recommend doing it. They are worth every penny. I think it was 360 bucks or something like that. For the home hobbyists like myself in the backyard, this thing should last me hopefully for a while anyway. It's definitely fun to use too. And it saves my wrists. I've got carpal tunnel real bad, so when I'm working a drill in a frame or something, like when I drilled the holes in the frame for this thing, man, if that thing catches and grabs my wrist, man, it just kills me. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and mark these holes out. I think I can get my transfer punch in here actually, but yeah, that works. A little bit of a funky angle, but that'll be good enough. I see you eyeballing my fancy digs here, huh? Wife got me a pair of overalls for Christmas. I've been wanting a pair just for rolling around on the ground. It's kind of nice to have. I figured you can't work on an old logging truck without wearing overalls, right? Guess we'll count how many times I'm going to do this today. Luckily, they're not too heavy, really. I'll go ahead and drill all these the upper holes, and then I'll bolt the bracket up, and then I'll mark, well, I don't know. Just trying to think this through from my head how I want to do it. It's not rocket science. Don't overthink it. Wrong button. There we go. Good Lord, it's noisy today. All right, back on again. It looks pretty cool. I dig that, man. I love saddle tanks. It just brings me back to driving a truck again, you know. Well, ultimately, that's what we're doing with this thing. I'm just making myself a little mini semi-truck since I can't afford to buy a real one. My ultimate goal, my dream truck, is a needle nose Kenworth. like a 1940s, late 40s, something like that. When I first started driving a truck, I was a rookie. I was working local at the time, and there was a guy that used to come in seasonally. We used to do what we called the pumpkin run, where we would just deliver pumpkins all over the valley, and we'd also go over to California and we'd do a whole bunch of pumpkin deliveries in the Central Valley for like Home Depot, Walmart, that type of thing. But there used to be a guy that would come to Phoenix every single year that was friends with the owner of the company. And he would come out from Pennsylvania. He had one, and he would drive that, he would bobtail that truck all the way out here, and he would run pumpkins for us and watermelons and stuff like that through the summer months. And then he would go back home in the wintertime. You'd think it backwards, but anyway, that's what he did, because that's when we needed him. But anyway, he had a 40, I think it was a 48. It had a big Cam Cummins in it, aluminum frame, you know, spring ride. I mean, just down and dirty. This was not a restored, beautiful truck. But I just remember he had twin sticks in it, and he gave me a ride in that thing. I had to drop my truck off at the rental place to get serviced, and he came and picked me up. And I'll never forget that feeling of just riding in that truck. It was just the coolest thing ever. So ever since then, ever since that time, that I just had this infatuation with needle nose Kenworths, and eventually I'd love to be able to find one someday and build one. I see them pop up every once in a while, reasonably priced, you know, but they're getting harder to find, and they've just gone way up in value along with everything else. But just such a cool truck. All right, those are bolted. Looks pretty good. We'll just put that thing in right there, and that goes underneath the frame rail, of course. Okay, easy peasy. I need a place to set stuff down here. I got nowhere to set anything down. I don't know how I'm gonna drill these lower holes. I gotta mark them somehow. Actually, I can probably get a center punch in there. All right, I got these plates in, and then I got the holes marked. Now I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna mark them to drill them. I think what I'm gonna do is try the lazy way, and I just have a long punch here. I'm gonna try to go all the way through the frame rail. Just try to get it in the center there as close as I can. All right, let's see if this works or not. I don't know. This is probably pretty stupid. Well, it's pretty centered. Looks okay. Okay, now, I might have to undo the exhaust. Get the mag drill. I went ahead and dropped the exhaust out of the way. Since those holes are at an angle, I need these things to be as straight as possible. I wish I would have cleaned this ground. I should have broomed it all off first, but oh well. Pretty cool, man. Cool you can do this upside down. It is a little heavy upside down. Okay. Whoa. Okay, well, I hit the frickin' switch somehow. Dumbass. I don't know what happened there. Okay. Are we good? Are you staying this time? Okay, something's wrong here. It's not happy upside down. I think there's burrs under here that it's... not letting it sit. Okay, this is turning into a shit show here. This thing is unruly upside down. If it is not flat against the frame, it just wreaks havoc. All right, let's try that again. Okay. Mag drill upside down, not so easy. You definitely got to take it really easy when you're on upside down. When you start it, just go nice and slow, because otherwise it'll pull that magnet's just not that strong. That was miserable. All right, $120 later at the hardware store. I just bought a bunch of big bulk boxes of hardware. I figured, well, I'm gonna use it anyway, I might as well buy it. I'm just gonna bolt this thing in for good, I think. I don't think I need to take this out again. So I might as well be done with it. Tight enough. They are mounted, cross members in. Everything's bolted up. Looks really good. That's gonna add a lot of strength now to support these tanks once they're fully loaded. And I would say these things are definitely strong enough, that's for sure. I have the original fuel lines here from the motorhome. One's a feed, one's a return, and then the other little one here. This is for the evap, for the charcoal canister. I'd like to retain all of that stuff and reuse it. So I think what I'll do is I'll cut these things off somewhere, shorten them up, hook them up, and then figure out my layout as far as where I want to put them. All right, guys, well, it's the next morning here. So I spent the morning on the internet just trying to figure out what I want to do as far as how I want to adapt these fuel lines. I have all the steel lines and everything, and I was looking at shortening them so I can reuse everything as much as I can. But then I got into using unions and stuff like that, and I really don't want to use compression fittings or unions and stuff on fuel lines. So what I did was I ended up ordering a bunch of adapters. I was looking at replacing the fuel lines on here completely all the way up to the throttle body. You can get adapters and convert it to 6AN fittings. But what I'm gonna do instead is I'm gonna leave these steel lines up to the throttle body. I'll leave these alone. And then I bought adapters to adapt these M14 and M16 O-ring fittings. So I'm gonna go ahead and adapt these to a 6AN fitting, and then I'm just gonna make steel braided fuel line to go to the tank and to the sending unit. And then on the sending unit itself, they already come with the O-ring fittings on here. So instead of modifying this thing, you know, if I ever have to replace this, I just wanna be able to pull it out and put a new one in it and be done with it. So I ordered adapters for this as well to convert this to a 6AN. So now in between here and the fuel lines to the throttle body, it'll be 6AN braided fuel line and fittings. And then the fuel filter as well, I went ahead and ordered the adapters, male adapters to 6AN. So then I can just use an off-the-shelf standard fuel filter. I was just looking at doing like an aftermarket inline fuel filter and whatnot, but I figured I'd rather just use factory stuff as much as possible. So now I can use the stock fuel filter, and then in between everything is just gonna be -6 steel braided fuel line. So serviceability wise, it makes it really simple for the fuel pump and the fuel filter. And then I'm not messing with the throttle body or anything like that as well. I ordered all those fittings this morning. They're not gonna, today's Saturday, they're not gonna be here till probably Monday or Tuesday. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start working on the tank and getting this thing mocked up and getting this thing fitted in. Now I was debating on where I wanted to put this sending unit in the tank. I think I'm just gonna put it right here. This is where the original Isuzu fuel gauge sending unit sat. And then these fuel lines actually go in there. I'll have to get these out of the way as well because they go down to the center of the tank. I was looking at putting the sending unit back here on the back side of the tank, but I'd rather just do it here. That way everything's centrally located. Okay, now I got this thing figured out. Pull it back off of here. Get rid of that thing. Okay. Of course, as I'm cutting that, I'm wondering if it's too big, but no, it's fine. I was wondering if it was just too big of a square, but I think it'll be all right. All right, so this sending unit is 15 inches deep. I need a little room, probably an inch below it. So let's see, the bottom of the seal, I would say if it's 15 and a half to 16, 15 and 3/4 deep, we should be all right. This was the only thing I was worried about putting this thing right here, is this little bit of interference here with these original fuel line pickups. This is a return, this is the feed, and these things go straight down into the center of the tank, so they're in the way down there. I'm gonna have to cut this out and then get in there and then remove them. That's why if I put it back here, it'd be plenty of room, but I feel like it'll be a little more protected up here, and I'd rather have it up here. So I'm just gonna deal with it and I'll figure it all out later. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna build a box around this thing essentially. So I actually need this thing to kind of come up a little bit on the tank to give me that clearance on the bottom. Try to get this thing all set up here. This doesn't have to be perfect, that's for sure. We're just gonna get her good enough. Just do this all the way around, I guess. All right, that should work. Obviously I gotta weld it up. Yeah, now that'll let me adjust the height in the tank exactly where I need it. As long as I can weld it without it leaking, we'll be good. But I think I'd be fine. All right, looks pretty good. It's not about pretty, it's just about function on this deal. I'll grind off these edges anyway, these corners, and so it'll sit down in the tank good once this thing cools off. She's all cleaned up. It's pretty good. Edges are good and crisp. Will it leak? Maybe. There's only one, where was it? There's one little spot right there that possibly might leak. But the rest of it is clean. Everything looks really good. All right. I kind of marked this with this top piece. I flipped it upside down and marked it. All right, I think I'm really close. I think I'm just gonna go to town on it, just start cutting on it. So wish me luck. Hopefully we don't, all I gotta do is get past the first couple sparks and we should be good. So now I've got this tank cleaned out pretty good, so we should be fine. Gotcha. All right, so in the back there. Oh, I'm really close. I just need to grind this edge just a tiny bit, and we're good. Oh, so close. Okay, that's it. Now what I can do is measure this, get this thing set to where I want it. That's 15.5 to the ring. Let's see, that seal, from that seal to there is 15, to the seal is 15 inches. So half an inch, that's gonna put it right down at the bottom. I think I just wanna get it to where the sock is just off the bottom of the tank, just a tiny bit. I think that's pretty good. Now, inside the tank here, I've got some things I need to remove, so I'm gonna pull this back off so I can get in there and get those out. And then I'll deal with that. All right, so inside the tank is the original screen from the diesel, and then this was just the support for the return line. Okay, there's one. That's all they are. This one does not want to come off. There it goes. Got it. Now I'm going to put this thing in. Okay, just get that kind of locked in. Oh, shoot. Well, I can see it. Yeah, no, it looks like we're good. It's hard to tell. It looks like I'm about an inch off the bottom. Now this sock isn't very thick. I mean, this thing here is 3/4 of an inch. No, I'm sorry, 1.25 inches. So maybe I should go up just a tiny, tiny bit more. Yeah, 15 3/4. 15 3/4. All right, let's try that. See how that looks. Yeah, that's better. That's gonna give me plenty of room for the sock. So I know 15 3/4 is where I want it. So with the sock on, we should be in good shape. I don't know if you can see it in there, but it looks pretty good. Oh, we got company. One more thing that I did forget, I cut out the filler neck out of the original tank as well. So what I'm gonna do is on this tank is I'm gonna put this thing in right here and weld this into the tank, and then I'm gonna run a tube over to the driver's side of the truck, so then I can fill this tank from the driver's side. I have the original filler neck here from the motorhome as well, and I'll go ahead and I'll mount this thing up over on the driver's side. So I've got this kind of marked out, and I got this thing cleaned up, and all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut this tank out, and then I'll do a lap weld, and I'll just burn it all the way around here. Hopefully I cut enough out of there. Yep, looks all right. So I made a quick little box here for the fuel pump to sit inside of. And now this will sit in the bottom of the tank, but it's open on the bottom on both ends where the tank curves. So that'll allow fuel to flow in and out of it. So now I'll just get this thing kind of set close anyway, where I think it's gonna be. Then I'll drop the sending unit back in it, and then we'll get that lined out, and then I can get this thing welded into the bottom of the tank. All right, guys, I think I got that baffle set in there okay. I got enough opening there, it's just right to go ahead and let fuel run out as needed, but also it'll just trap fuel in there just enough, keep it fuel in there just long enough, hopefully, to keep it from starving the pump if it comes down to it. Okay, let's weld it in. Okay, that'll work. No, I think that looks okay. Looks like there's actually just enough residue in there. It's actually burning it off. I don't know if that's cool or scary. I definitely got this tank hot. Just that little bit of residue on the top of the tank was flashing off and burning. If it wasn't diesel fuel, I'd be a little more concerned, but 15 3/4, 15 3/4. Plenty of room for the sock right in the middle. All right, that looks good. Yeah, so this one welded up really good, and then I don't know what happened here. I must have got drunk or something. That side over there looks good. So I think we're fine. Not the prettiest work, but I'm gonna try to pressurize this tank somehow. I'll try to figure that out, cap everything off, and then I'll figure out how to put some pressure in this thing and see if I just get a couple PSI in it, you know, doesn't need much. Got this all welded up. This one welded up really good, actually. This one looks good. I think it's gonna be just fine. All right, that's gonna be nice now to have a stock style sending unit in here. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's nice to use as much stock equipment as I can use, you know, just off the shelf stuff, and that's the whole goal. I'm gonna do the same thing with the radiator and stuff up front. I wanna use like an OBS Chevy radiator, you know, so I can just roll into any parts store and say, I need this, you know, so. All right, cool, that turned out good. And then the other tank, I don't know. I gotta think about if I'm gonna use that. Let me know what you guys think. Should I just use the extra capacity, or it's a lot of fuel, you know, but if I do take this on a long road trip, it is nice, because I'm sure this thing's only gonna get maybe, I don't know. I'd probably be lucky to get 10 miles a gallon out of it, honestly. I don't know, it's gotta be better than that motorhome, you know, it's definitely more aerodynamic than the motorhome, and it's probably gonna be, weight-wise it might be close, I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you guys think with that. Fuel line fittings and all that stuff's gonna be here next week, so I'll get all that stuff done later. All right, another big thing you might be wondering about as far as the cooling system goes and what I'm gonna do there. I've honestly been procrastinating this deal because I've got to pull these fenders and everything off, because I've got to straighten this fender out right here. Now what's gonna happen is the grill. So I've gotta do some straightening on that grill and get that thing fixed to where I can get it bolted on to the front fenders correctly, because now I'm not using any of the inner structure from the original cabover. Well, at least right now I don't think I am, but I won't know until I get the grill back on it. So what I want to do is I want to get this fender straightened out, and I need to get these fenders pulled off because I've got quite a big gap right here. I think it was just from ice and snow getting in here and freezing and then opening up this gap. So, and a lot of this stuff, some of this stuff's going to disintegrate when I pull it apart. And yeah, this is going to be kind of a can of worms. Obviously, I have to fix all this stuff too, and I have nothing to go off of here to fix this. Some of this stuff down here needs to be fixed as well. So the steps and everything in the fenders are gonna be a little bit of a can of worms, so I've been kind of procrastinating on doing this. It obviously needs to be done sooner than later, so I'm just gonna have to get after it and attack it and fix what I can. Again, this is a preservation, not a restoration. If I can get it good enough to get everything to where it's bolted back up again, you know, and it looks decent, I'm fine with it. You know, I don't care about the little, you know, the other rust or whatever. I know this thing's a rust bucket and I'm fine with it. As far as the core support and all that, and basically just making some measurements, I think like a Chevy OBS, like a 88 to 98 Chevy truck core support and radiator, I think is gonna work perfect in this thing. I was looking at using like a 2003 Silverado Tahoe radiator as well, something like that, but I really didn't wanna run that. They don't have radiator caps on those radiators, and I didn't want to run the remote tank for the reservoir tank on the firewall. But, you know, whatever. I guess it just depends on what I come across. I'm looking for used parts right now. I've been searching Marketplace and Craigslist and stuff, trying to find somebody parting out a truck. I can go get a whole core support and then try to adapt the core support into this truck and, you know, into the front end and everything. I think it'll work out just fine. I'm gonna have to cut the front frame horns off as well and figure all that out, get the bumper mounted, yada yada. So the front end's gonna be a little bit of work. It's gonna be a lot of work actually, just trying to get the rust taken care of, get the fenders bolted on correctly, and the core support mounted. We're gonna get back at this thing. Now, I do have a plan for this thing. I would like to have this thing done and on the road, at least 90% done in April. I've got a plan for this thing that I'll share with you guys later. I think you guys will enjoy. Oh, you know what? I've been meaning to show you guys this and I keep forgetting about it. So I was at a garage sale up the street here from me, and I was walking around the guy's backyard, and on the table, ta-da, one of these tachograph things was sitting on the table, so I ended up buying this thing. I thought this thing would be so cool to mount on the dash. You know, these old log books, if you will. I dig stuff like this. The light still works inside of it, so I'll hook the lights up to the headlight, you know, and I'll mount it up on the dash like they used to. I think this thing was pretty cool if you've never seen one. These things are neat. And then on the inside, you put a disc. You put a disc on this side, and then you wind the clock up by hand, you know, and that times it. Look at all the wear marks from this thing, how much use it has on it. So pretty cool. It came from Valley Speedo and Tack. Looks like they did some service to it in California. There's a couple different, one date in here, 1982 is scratched into it, so pretty cool. This is gonna be a neat addition on the dash. Thanks for watching, I really do appreciate it. Thanks for being patient with me too. Let me take some time off. All right guys, I'm out of here. Battery's gonna die, everything's gonna die, microphone's gonna die. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, I do appreciate it, and have a great day.